of the sheet. I'm like, okay, he's a warrior, and a hunter, and thinking, warrior and hunter, he's on a quest or whatever. And the first thing that pops in my mind is like Native American culture at the time. I remembered, and I was like, okay, well, I don't really know if they're like Indians in D&D, so I'm just gonna say he's a dude whose like ancestors, a long time ago decided, um, fuck, you know, society. We have such a diversity of magic and monsters and, just all around dangers out here in the world, continuously filling up, every corner of the map more and more each year. And they're like, we need to, go back to the days where men were men, and we hunted and stuff, and we speared game and shit like that. And so, like, the ancestors of my tribe or whatever, you know, for God knows how many generations back, formed a tribe of dudes that lived out in the woods, and they just, they hunted and stuff, and they got back to the base roots, you know. And I'm from, you know, the Nighthawk tribe. And I put that down, and so, anyways, 4 hours go by, and that's pretty much the only thing I managed to be able to do within those 4 hours was think of a story, because everything else I was just kind of like dumbfounded on. I was like, can I have like a book to read? Maybe, like, do you have a manual or something? And he's like, yeah, I have it around, but I don't know where it is. And he's like, don't even worry about it. I'm like, okay, whatever. So, anyways, finally the party gets here, you know, and like four dudes. It makes a total party of six people. Keith's finally done with his thing, and I'm like, so Keith, what's your character? You've been working on, kind of correcting some of his stats, and he's like, yeah, I had to make him a little bit, weaker than he was. I want to reintroduce him into my game. I go, okay, and he's like, my guy's a samurai. I think, okay, it's Keith, and then Keith's big into samurai, so I'm like, okay, fantastic. Where does he hail from that samurai exist? And he's like, nowhere that you know of. I'm like, okay. So there are four people. They get there and they pull out their stuff and their dice and a character sheet, and Scott hands me a thing of beginner's dice, and I'm like, okay, which ones do I use and for what? And he's like, I'll just tell you when time comes. Like, okay. And the guy who ends up sitting next to me, and he's like, oh, so you're the new guy, huh? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, alright, well, don't worry, just stay behind the main group, and, we'll show you around and shit, and, we'll just try and keep up, and, warn us if anything's coming up from behind us and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. Scott's finally done. Finally done writing notes, finally done flipping through books, finally done with his planning, and everybody's all ready to go. And he's like, alright, is everybody good? Everybody ready to do this? And they're like, oh yeah, let's get this on the way, this show on the road, right? And Scott's like, okay, so here's the story. And I shit you not, it is the most half-assed story ever. Oh, here's the story. For some reason, a temple has a brand new temple has or temple that hasn't been around in like 1,000 years, right? Or so, or within any generation that anybody has ever heard of, right? It's like a very old temple, right? But nobody from like, you know, this era knows about it. So a very ancient temple that nobody knows anything about. So it's practically, you know, allows Scott to basically put whatever the fuck he wants in it. Right. That's what at least I'm thinking right off the bat. I'm like, oh, okay. I wonder how this is gonna go down. And he's like, so a temple has recently um, risen up from the earth in this section of the wilderness, and people have gone in. A couple of people have gone in already, but nobody's gone out. And it's rumored that there's, tons of magical stuff and tons of money in this dungeon, because how could there not be if, the people down there, haven't come back. There's got to be something magical about it. Or there's got to be something guarding, something worth a lot of money down there. And rumors and stuff of this temple and what could possibly be in it, and have just spread throughout the land, right? And he's like, so for some reason or another, and this is how he describes it. He's like, so for some reason or another, you all find yourselves going to this temple. You all need money, and you all want the prestige of becoming dungeoneers. And so you all head to the tunnel at the same time, and you all are surprised to meet one another at the same time right outside this dungeon that you've heard so much about in this particular area in the wilderness. And you figure, well, while we're all here, why not? And that is exactly what he said. That's exactly how he presented the story, And I'm just like, so okay. We're preordained by fate or destiny or whatever to all meet up and go into this fucking temple. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, so let's do this, And he's like, roll, initiative. And I'm like, what? he's just here, and he hands me this dice, and he's like, roll it. I'm like, oh, okay. And I roll it. And I think I get like a really low number or whatever. The guy next to me, he's playing the dwarf character. We're all playing a diverse grouping of characters. Guy next to me, he's a dwarf. Keith, he's a human. samurai. One of the guys is like a elf or something. Another dude's a halfling. And I think the other guy was like an orc or something. I don't know. Anyways, we're all a real diverse group of races and classes. And dude next to me, he gets the high number, and he's like, "Okay, so what do I see as far as the entrance of this tunnel is concerned? What does the entrance of this tunnel look like?" And he's like, "It is shaped like the head of a serpent, and the mouth is the entrance, and that's all you can see." He's like, "Okay." Like, is there anything else that I can possibly perceive about my, surroundings? It's kind of like he already knows that, what kind of DM Scott is, Well, I mean, I guess he should. I mean, if they've, played together, of course. But, it's just kind of like he, you know, more in depthly, he already kind of knows before we do what's going on. Because, already he's just kind of like, I don't want to go in the dungeon, and we just got here. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, the dude who knows Scott doesn't want to go in the dungeon, you know. And so he's like, yeah, I'm just going to look around, you know. I'm going to, what else do I perceive about the night? He's like, nothing. It's just, snakehead and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, I'm going to walk around the snakehead. Uh, what kind of foundation makes up? He's like brick, or whatever. Um, he says something like he's like brick or whatever, and he goes all around and he's like, okay, is there any shrubbery nearby? And Scott's like, no, and he's like, are you sure I don't perceive anything else about my surroundings and stuff? And Scott's like, you perceive that you should get the fuck in the dungeon. And so he's all like, you start to see that fangs of the serpent are actually descending, and as they're descending, you can see a gate start to close. And so everybody's like, okay, well, I guess we gotta rush in or the gate closes. And so we go in there, and the gate closes behind us. And we get in there, and he's got like multiple levels to this temple that's just kind of going underground, right? And in each level are like a whole bunch of like doors to these different rooms. I mean, yeah, it's a dungeon or whatever, but it's literally just every single floor is just a hallway that either turns off into something else or curves around to another hallway, and it's just a hallway of like wooden doors, and each door leads into a room. But there's literally nothing else that's discerning about the dungeon other than it is just a room full of doors, and the consensus really quick becomes, okay, we're going to play a guessing game with these doors to figure out which one actually takes us deeper into the dungeon. And